And hello again, everybody. This is Pucks from the Pine Tree Pod. My name is Benjamin Kennedy. Thank you so much for joining us on this very exciting July 1st. And happy July, by the way, everybody. 4th of July week, and happy Canada to all of our brethren up north celebrating today. Guys, it has been a busy day. It's been a busy day. Over $1 billion has been spent today in NHL free agency. These GMs have just gone a little bonkers. That's what happens when you raise the salary cap a little bit. But got so much to get into today, guys. We're going to take a quick look around the league, see some of the bigger names that have gone, where they've gone, how that's kind of changed those teams. And certainly we'll do a deeper dive into your Boston Bruins. Been a busy day for them as well. Before we get into all of that, though, there was some news that broke during the day from the NHL offices that NHL coach Joe Quenneville, former coach of the Chicago Blackhawks and last coach for the Florida Panthers, is being reinstated, along with two or three others from the Chicago Blackhawks time there back in that 2010 case involving Kyle Beach. I'm not going to get into the details of all of it. It's a nasty situation, but he has been reinstated. One of the most successful coaches in league history. No doubt there'll be teams looking at him. There's only one opening right now in Columbus, but you can guarantee that as there's firings or coaches that move on, that Joel will definitely get an opportunity now. So a little bit surprising that the NHL kind of slides that news in during NHL free agency. Maybe a little PR stunt there on them. Certainly, there's been a lot of negative feedback so far all over social media about this, but um, yeah, he's going to have another opportunity to coach, and no doubt there'll be teams lining up for his services. So, like I said, over $1 billion has been signed today in NHL contracts. I think at last count it was like 120 contracts signed today. Um, some were re-ups and restricted free agents, but a lot of unrestricted free agents that went today. Some of this news broke overnight with some of those. With some of those free agents, re-signing with their clubs, but just a ton of movement. I'm not going to cover all 120 whatever transactions, so please don't worry. I would. I'm not interested in doing that. You're not interested in hearing about all of that, but we're going to go over some of the big stuff here today, guys. Starting with Detroit, well, yesterday re-signing Patrick Kane to a one-year extension. Not really a shock here. Patrick picked that team a year ago. He's at the tail end of his career. This could be his last go of it, but signs a $4 million extension that also includes a $2.5 million kind of incentive laden piece. So could be up to 6.5 million. Out of Florida, a lot of movement in Florida today, both comings and goings. But Sam Reinhart sticking around, taking a team friendly deal, 8-year contract, 8.625 per. No question, this guy would have gotten probably north of 10 million had he hit the open market. Was over 50 goals this year. Huge part of that Stanley Cup winning team, and really good on Florida to not only be able to keep him, but keep that number down, keep that contract down a little bit. Defenseman Dmitry Kulikov also re-signing 4-year deal, 1.15 per. So a couple of good gets there for Florida. Keep those guys in house. The Chicago Blackhawks super busy today, picking up forward old friend Tyler Bertuzzi on a 4-year deal, 5.5 million per. As of last reports yesterday, Toronto was trying to work something out with him, but just didn't seem to go. So now he ends up in the Western Conference, another original six team. Think about he's played for Detroit, Boston, Toronto, now Chicago. Just a couple left, buddy. Making your rounds, making your rounds. Alec Martinez, defenseman, also signing there in Chicago. 1 year, $4 million deal from Vegas. Vegas just getting destroyed today, losing a ton of players. We talked about them earlier, having some cap issues, and they're losing a lot of guys today. Goalie Laurent Brossois signing a 2-year deal at 3.3 per out of Winnipeg to go be part of that goalie tandem there. Another old friend, Craig Smith, signing up there with the Blackhawks. 1 year, 1 million per, coming out of Dallas. Teo Teravainen coming out of Carolina, 3-year deal, $5.4 million contract. So that's a really good get for Chicago. Gives them a real solid goal scorer type to go with Bertuzzi to help Connor Bedard and build this group. I really like what they've done there. They got him locked up for 3 years. And then yet another old friend, Patty Maroon, signing a 1 year, $1.3 million deal. No doubt there to be a heavy, someone there to protect Bedard. Him and Nick Foligno should do a good job of that. So super busy today. They should be a much more competitive team going into next year. I still don't really have them as a playoff team, but these are all the right things they should be doing. They got tons of money to spend. You got, the best young player in the league in Bedard. They want to be able to protect him, insulate him a little bit here early on. Good on them. Toronto Maple Leafs making some news. They did re-up defenseman Tim Lilligren yesterday. 2 year deal there, 3 million per year. They do get the Chris Tanev deal done. They traded for his rights. They get him at 6 years at 4.5 million. So good get for them. Tanev, I really like him a lot. He is a little bit older, about 34, 35. 6 years, that may not age very well. He does get hurt a lot too. So that'd be the only concern I'd have if you're Toronto. But overall, this is what they need to do. They need to up their defensive game. I think he's a good get. Goalie news for them, they do pick up Anthony Stolars from Florida on a 2 year, $2 million per year contract, and they do re-sign Joseph Wall. Again, no surprise there. Get him on a 3 year, 3.66. So, really you've got 5.66 tied up into your goalie tandem. That's great if you're Toronto. Two good young goaltenders. I really like what they did there. Defenseman Oliver Ekman Larson coming out of Florida, signing there as well, 4 year deal at 3.5 million per season. So played a good role for Florida. Kind of reignited his career a little bit after a couple tough years in Vancouver, and gets a nice little payday there. So Toronto pretty busy today as well. Tampa Bay, they lose a bunch of players today. We'll kind of get to some of those, but they do get Jake Gensel done, 7 years at $9 million per season. Probably the biggest get of the day. We know that his rights were, of course, traded down there to Tampa a couple days ago, so they get that done. And no doubt they'll be replacing, some of what their captain is leaving behind. We'll talk about Mr. Stamkos here in a few minutes. Washington Capitals also staying really, really busy today. They've been one of the kind of the sneaky teams here in the offseason, really making a few moves that I quite honestly didn't really expect. But they do re-up their forward Connor McMichael on a 2 year, $2.1 million per season contract. Then they make a trade with Ottawa. And this one really got Bruins fans a little bit wound up today, getting Jacob Chikrin, defenseman from Ottawa, player that the Bruins had maybe been talked about, bringing him over for Linus Ullmark, something like that. But he ultimately does get out of Ottawa, gets to Washington. One of my favorites, defenseman Matt Roy, also re-signing, or not re-signing, but signing with Washington. 6 year deal, 5.75 million per. So good deal for Matt. Always liked this guy's game. Was kind of hoping maybe Boston would be able to get in on him, but that doesn't happen. So they do a good job of getting a couple of good defensive players there. And they also pick up forward Brandon Duhane, a 2 year deal, 1.85 million coming out of Colorado. So I mean, all these moves they've made, getting PLD and some of the other stuff they've already done, they're really telling the league, hey, we're going to try to make another run at this. We want to get back to the playoffs. We feel like we can do it, and obviously get Ovi to that big Gretzky number as he's been chasing. Seattle making a couple of interesting moves today too. A couple long-term contracts here. Getting defenseman Brandon Montour from Florida, fresh off of winning the Stanley Cup. He gets a 7 year, $7.14 million contract. Big, big get for Montour. I think that's a good contract for him. A little bit risky on the term, I think, if you're Seattle, but he is a good defenseman. Been part of that big time team there in Florida for a few years. They also pick up center Chandler Stevenson out of Vegas, another Vegas player out the door, another 7 year contract at 6.25. Another player that Boston was thought to be in on. He was on my wish list. Veteran guy, can kind of play up and down the lineup a little bit, can play center, can play wing. Again, I like the aggressiveness for Seattle. They want to get back to the playoffs. They want to rebuild themselves a little bit here as they're, I think, entering year 4 of their existence. But those terms are a little bit tough at 7 years apiece. San Jose getting Tyler Toffoli, one of the better goal scorers in this free agent class. They get him from Winnipeg. Of course, Toffoli had started in New Jersey this year, traded to Winnipeg, 4-year deal, 6 million per season. So good get for San Jose. It's funny they're not going to be any place close to competitive, but they're out there spending money, filling out their team again, kind of doing like what Chicago's doing. They're getting good veteran guys into the program to help kind of insulate Celebrini and Will Smith, some of these younger guys that they have coming into their lineup. Now we go to Nashville. Nashville Predators making the splash of the day, getting center and captain Steven Stamkos. 4-year deal, $8 million per season. He says goodbye to Tampa Bay. Something we talked about last night that it seemed like it was over, despite the fact that Stammer had gone down this road before and did re up with Tampa. This time it seemed like, the Lightning had all the time in the world to get him done. Stammer did turn down their last offer, and, it just felt like it was over. Nashville, they were aggressive today. Barry Trotz was in on it. Get him done. Get a great veteran guy. Again, one of the best gets of the day. They also pick up forward Jonathan Marchessault from Vegas. 5-year deal there at 5.5 per. So good contracts. A couple really good veteran guys, winners, leaders. This Nashville team might be a little bit scary next year with Forsberg there, the goalie, in Saros. They've got Ryan O'Reilly. They've got a pretty stout veteran club now, and it's just going to be really weird seeing Stammer in a yellow jersey next year. That's going to be really, really odd. A lot of Lightning fans are pretty ticked off today about that. I get it. It's tough to lose your captain. This is one of those players you just felt like should have just retired, uh, you know, in Tampa, but that's not how it always goes, right? You have to kind of roll with the punches here, and they do get Gensel, so that's going to be where they pick up that offensive kind of deficit that Stammer's leaving behind. New Jersey, they of course lose a few of the players, some of their defense over the past couple days, but they do pick up both Brett Pesci, a 6-year contract at 5.5 per from Carolina, and Brendan Dillon out of Winnipeg, another guy that was on my list. 3-year deal at $4 million per. So really doing a great job. They got the goaltender. Now they got a couple good defensemen. So really good gets for them. If they can stay healthy, if Hughes can stay healthy, if Markstrom can be Markstrom, this team should be back in the playoffs next year. We'll be doing team previews as we get into August and September, but New Jersey's looking all the bits like a playoff team now. So that's certainly not everything that happened today, but those are some of the kind of the highlights as of this point, as of recording. We are going to get into Boston now. They were also very, very active, very busy today, and I thought did a very nice job in terms of what they needed and what was out there. Starting with defenseman Nikita Zadorov, big defenseman, get him on a 6-year deal at $5 million per season, coming out of Vancouver. Last year in 75 games, he had 6 goals, 14 assists for 20 points. Big, physical, hard hitting guy. Um, you want to add some beef to your blue line. This is the guy you go get. This is exactly what the Bruins, I feel like, needed. Um, really like him a lot. And I like the term there. Not so much the term, but the dollars, the 5 million there. There was a lot of rumors that he would be going for 6.5. So I like getting him at 5. Maybe not super crazy about 6 years, but this is kind of what happens. Uh, then you get the much rumored center Elias Lindholm, also out of Vancouver. You get him on a 7-year deal at 7.75 million per. Again, another contract I like. I think there was a lot of talk about 8.5, maybe $9 million a year for Lindholm. You get him for 775. Again, longer term, 7 years. He's I think 29 years old. So, back half of this contract, last couple of years, this contract may not look great, but You worry about that later, right? You get the player you need. You got a frontline center now, exactly what you needed. Did have a down year last year, 79 games between Calgary and Vancouver, 15 goals for 29 assists and 44 points. So, yes, down year. You hope that coming to Boston, playing with Pasternak, playing with Marshy and the rest of the group, should get him going. 200-foot player, good defensive, kind of responsible player. We'll talk a little bit more about him later. After that, you do get forward Max Jones out of Anaheim, 2-year, $1 million per season contract. This guy's 26 years old, 6'3", 220 pounds. So, again, a little bit of meat on his bones. He played 52 games last year for Anaheim, 5 goals, 10 assists for 15 points. And then you get forward Riley Tufte out of Colorado on a 1-year league minimum, 775,000. Another 26 years old, 6'6", 220 pounds. Again, you can see a theme here going back from the draft a couple days ago to what the Bruins have done today. I think Zadorov is 6'6", so you're getting size. You are definitely targeting size, which is a big thing that has been talked about with this club, that they need to get bigger, they need to get more physical. I think you did that today with these players. In 67 games with the AHL club for Colorado, Tufte had 23 goals, 22 assists for 45 points. Did only play the 5 games in Colorado, had a goal and an assist for the 2 points. So both these guys are going to give you options on that fourth line to kind of rebuild that fourth line little bit. You might see these guys bounce up and down a little bit between Providence and Boston, but guys who should definitely be in the running for fourth line duties and probably for some penalty kill, perhaps, on this club down the road. Both Jones and Tufte were first round picks back in 2016. So they've been in the league for a little bit, but both were highly regarded players coming out of college or coming out of um, their eligible year for the draft. A few other names: defenseman Billy Sweezy. They get him on a 2-year, $775,000 contract. It is a two-way contract, meaning he can kind of go up and down. And most likely, these next four players are all probably going to be ticketed for Providence, but gives some organizational depth. Defenseman Jordan Osterley, a little bit of a journeyman coming out of Calgary, signs a 2-year, $775,000 contract as well. Um, Forward Cole Kepka gets a 1-year, 775, another two-way contract, and then forward Jeffrey Vale, 2 years at 775. This one's a two-way contract in the first year, and then in the second year, it's a one-way, meaning he's up here with Boston. So, uh, like I said, there's a lot of size, a lot of physicality with this group of players that you've added today. There's no question that was a target for Boston. Uh, I absolutely love the Lindholm and Zadar signings. Like I said, I think this is exactly what we needed here with this Bruins club. A lot of people already talking, kind of complaining about the terms on these contracts. They're talking 6 and 7 years. But you have to understand when you're competing against all these other clubs, like Toronto was very much in on Zadorov. Do you want him to go to the Maple Leafs? I don't think so. You got to kind of cave a little bit, and you got to give some turn to these guys, especially at the ages we're talking, kind of late 20s. They're going to be looking for that. You don't give it to them. Again, over $1 billion was spent today. Someone else was going to pay these guys. And you also have to keep in mind that this salary cap is going to continue to go up over the next few years. We're at 88 million today. It's going to be, I think 92 million next year. Before you know it, will be well over 100 million. So by the time you get to years 4, 5, 6 on these contracts, as long as the player is playing well and is healthy, these shouldn't be too bad. They should actually become more of a value as we go. That's going to be the same with Pasternak and with McAvoy, some of these other bigger contracts that we have out there. So I'm not as worried about the term. I like the cap hits. I think it could have been a lot worse on these guys, and it's clear that these guys wanted to come to Boston. So great, great to see that. Now, what are you getting with Elias Lindholm? We already talked that his numbers last year were a little bit down. You go back a couple years ago, he was an 80. I think he had 82 points back a couple years ago there in Calgary, where he had some really good chemistry with Goudreau and with Matthew Kachuk. Those players leave. Obviously, Calgary's gone through quite an overhaul over the past couple seasons and not able to find that same offensive rhythm. It gets traded to Vancouver, doesn't really work out as well as I think the Canucks wanted it to. Did start to find his rhythm in the playoffs a bit, found some good chemistry, but it did take a little while and probably not again to the satisfaction of him or the Canucks. And I'm sure Lindholm would probably own that. Say, hey, it just didn't work. Maybe there are other things he needed to do, but I think a refresh, a restart here in Boston is exactly what he needs, and he's exactly what we needed. A clear number one center, and he'll have a clear role here, where he didn't have that in Vancouver. He's coming in to be that 1C, to play with Pasta. It's gonna be a lot of fun to see. And, this guy's also a solid defensive player. He's not quite Bergeron, but he has a little bit of Bergeron's game in him where he's gonna play good defense. He's good in the faceoff circuit. He was a 56.4% last season. You coulda used that against Florida. I mean, I think that definitely played out against Florida, that faceoff circle. Started to play it a little bit against Toronto too, to be honest. I mean, Max Domi kinda dominated the Bruins in a couple of those games. You definitely need, some help there, and this is exactly what Lindholm is going to give you. So now what this means is you can put Coyle and Zach in better spots kinda down your lineup. Coyle maybe goes to 2C, Zaka maybe goes to a wing position. Keep in mind you got Matty Patra, you got Beecher, you still have Morgan Geeky who can center, Trent Frederick can center a little bit if you need him to. Now you have some actual depth there to work with. Excellent, excellent pickup for Boston. Again, there weren't a ton of big time centers out there. You had Stamkos, you had Stevenson, and Lindholm. I think were really the big three. As far as Zadorov, his presence on this team really should allow the rest of the defensive unit, talking mostly about McAvoy, Lohrei, Lindholm, to really contribute and get more involved offensively. Zadorov is more of a stay-at-home type of defenseman, bigger guy. When you factor him in with Andrew Peak, who you picked up from Columbus last season, this blue line all of a sudden has gotten much bigger, much more physical, a little bit scarier to play against, perhaps. No more of players just skating down the middle of the ice and putting 40 shots on our goalie. That's why these guys are here. That's why Zadorov is signed today. He is a heavy hitter. He is going to take some penalties. I think as he's gotten older, he's getting a little more responsible, but he does have a little bit of that kind of that wild, in his game. So you're going to have to take a little bit of the good with the bad with him. But overall, I think that physicality is something that has been sorely missed in this club for a couple of years, and he's definitely going to come in and fix that. I can't wait to see him on the ice with both Jones and Tufte. Like we said, they kind of add a little bit to that fourth line options for you. You're going to give you another physical type of fourth line to go along with Kostelic, who you picked up in the Allmark trade. You got Justin Brazeau down there as well, along with Beecher, kind of centering that. This is also part of why Patty Maroon isn't back. You get these two kids. You have Brazeau. You have Kostelic. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Um, you have some really good options, physical options there for that fourth line, and that's kind of what you want. A kind of a good checking, old-fashioned checking line. I think you're going to have that this year, so that is great. Listen, guys, the Bees are a better team today than they were yesterday. I think they answered some of the most important needs here in day one. Center and blue line help. There's still some names out there to keep in mind. As of recording, Adam Henrique, forward out of Edmonton, Jeff Skinner, who was cut from Buffalo, he's out there. Cam Atkinson's out there. Vladimir Tarasenko from Florida is available still. Tyler Johnson, it's kind of a third, fourth line center out of Chicago. JVR, still available, hasn't been signed yet today. You have Daniel Sprong from Detroit, Jesper Boquist, another Boston RFA, Max Pacioretty, old friend from Montreal, lastly played in Washington. He's available. The Bruins have probably, as far as holes go, you do lose DeBrus today. You could probably use a second line forward on this group, and you obviously still need to get Swayman locked up. You have I think it must be now with the other signings right around 7 million or so under the cap. If you move some guys back to the minors, you might be around 8.5 or 9, something like that. I know the numbers are fluctuating. Most of that has to go to Swayman, but you might be able to move things around to open up a couple more million if you want to go get someone, um, someone else. But uh, that's that's really, I think, that the last big hole you have here, and you may not be able to fill it. You go out and you prioritize to get the center, you prioritize to go get that defenseman, um, and it kind of comes at a cost. Gensel wasn't available. You lose to Brusque, and kind of spend your money where you do. It might take someone like a Merkulov or Fabian Lysell to step up and have a big camp. If you could get one of those kids to rise up the ranks a little bit, that could be your answer for sure. We do want to talk just briefly about some of the UFAs from Boston that did leave town today. Jake DeBrusk getting paid in Vancouver, 7-year deal, 5.5 million per season. Dan Heinen, pretty sad about this one, guys, going also to Vancouver. Good on him, 2-year contract at 2.25 million. Derek Forbert joining them also in Vancouver on a 1-year deal, 1.5 million. Longtime friend Matty Grizzlick heading to Pittsburgh to go play with Sidney Crosby, gets a 1-year deal at 2.75 million. And Patty Maroon off to Chicago, like we said before, on a 1-year, $1.3 million year contract. It's always kind of hard to say goodbye, right? Nebraska and Heinen hurt a little bit. I've really liked watching Nebraska as he's evolved his game. Um, really just, seeing him become a better player without the puck. That was the biggest thing that Cassie had an issue with him. And he really started to learn, how can I help my team without the puck? Became more of a 200-foot player, playing on the PK. I'm really proud of him. He went from kind of being a one-trick pony to being a full, complete player. If you're a Canucks fan, yeah, I think you're gonna like him. I think that you're gonna have to put up with the streaks. He's a very streaky player. When he's hot, he is on fire. When he's cold, he's ice cold. But at least when he's cold today, he's still playing. I think back to that Toronto series when the team was kind of scuttling a little bit. DeBrusque was very noticeable out there. Even when they weren't getting shots, they weren't getting goals. DeBrusque was out there working and seemed to be one of the harder workers out there. So I would have never been comfortable with 7 years on him. Um, I was probably more around the 3 to 4 years at 4.5 to 5. Um, so I'm not shocked. I thought he'd go out west. I kind of thought Edmonton. He ends up in Vancouver. Heinen is one that does make me a little bit sad. Really liked what he did for us last year, but again, good on him. He earns that contract. Remember, he came in on a PTO last year, hung around the club, no guarantees, worked his butt off, took a risk on himself, and took a chance on himself, and it's paying off for him. So good on him. I'm happy to see Forbert get work. Given his injury history, really wasn't sure where he would end up. But Vancouver filling a need for themselves. And no surprise, Matty Grizzlick taking off as well. We knew we weren't going to resign him this year. An old BU player, been in Boston for a long time, but time for a change. He'll have a chance to be part of a Pittsburgh team that, listen, they made a couple moves today. We'll see if they can get themselves back to the playoffs. We know that Grizzly can be a good puck moving defenseman, has some of those health issues, not the most physical player, but should fit in well with what Pittsburgh has going on. And then, of course, Patty Maroon, big tough guy, brings that winning pedigree to Chicago. He's simply, I think, there to be a mentor, be a little bit of a protective shield for Connor Bedard and some of those other younger players. Uh, it was nice having him here for the little bit that he was. Not surprised that he moves on. But anyway, guys, how do you feel the Bees did today? Leave those comments down below. And if you're a fan of another club, how did your team do? What would you like to have seen your club do differently? Like I said earlier, we're going to do season or team previews as we get into August, as free agency kind of settles down a little bit. And I'll get deeper into all the clubs that are out there, but would definitely love to hear from all of you, and just see what you thought of today. It's certainly not over. Free agency has just begun. Um, So there'll be certainly more to come. But thank you all so much for watching. I definitely appreciate the support. If you like what you're hearing, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And until next time, be kind, show love, and God bless.